I have a physical allergy to alcohol, and coupled with the mental obsession, my disease, I do believe, continues to get stronger, even though I've been sober for a very long time. I've heard of people that have gone back out. I've heard their stories, and sometimes they don't make it back. It terrifies me. Don't give up. It's always available. And I never stopped coming to meetings. I mean, it is the solution for me and can be your solution. If you're an alcoholic, I believe it'll work for you.
Welcome to the Daily Reflection Podcast with your hosts Michael L. and Lee M. This is a show where we strive to provide inspiration for those in recovery through interviews with members of the recovery community. Although we're not aligned with any 12-step recovery program, you may hear them mentioned throughout the course of an interview. Welcome to the show, everyone. Today's February 7th. We've got Nan F. in from Jacksonville Beach, Florida. That's who you heard at the beginning of the episode. Before we jump into the episode, I'd love to ask for your help. If you're listening on a podcast app, can I ask you to give us a rating? Let us know what you think. Give us maybe a comment. These things mean a lot to me so that we can keep the show moving in the right direction. I love your feedback. If you're listening on YouTube, maybe give us a thumbs up. Thanks, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this episode. It's great to have you on the show. Would you get us started by reading the Daily Reflection for February 7th?
Sure. A path to faith. True humility and an open mind can lead us to faith, and every AA meeting is an assurance that God will restore us to sanity if we rightly relate ourselves to Him. That's from the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions, page 33. My last drunk had landed me in the hospital, totally broken. It was then that I was able to see my past float in front of me. I realized that, through drinking, I had lived every nightmare I ever had. My own self-will and obsession to drink had driven me into a dark pit of hallucinations, blackouts, and despair. Finally beaten, I asked God's help. His presence told me to believe. My obsession for alcohol was taken away, and my paranoia has since been lifted. I am no longer afraid. I know my life is healthy and sane.
Tell me what this daily reflection means to you.
So this brings me back to when I had my white light experience, which was back in 1986. And I had not come into AA yet, but I had come into the rooms of Al-Anon because I was in a relationship with someone whose drinking had progressed, and it was causing me a great deal of emotional pain. And I hadn't believed in God. I decided as a child, that I would pray to God and nothing would happen. And so I decided that God didn't exist. And then I heard the 12 steps in Al-Anon. They use the same 12 steps we do. And, I was just in so much pain that I stopped fighting. And then one day I was in a lot of pain. I'd been up all night, worried about this person who I thought who had been suicidal. And I had a vision. I had a vision of how God had been working in my whole life and how that everything that I thought that I wanted and prayed for was really a blessing, and that God had the hand of God. I saw the hand of God through my whole life. It was really, really powerful.
What was it like prior to coming into the rooms?
Oh yeah. So I was definitely alcoholic. I drank alcoholically from the very beginning. My father was an alcoholic. He drank and I can say that because he drank a fifth of gin every single night. And I would see him stumble down the hall on his way to bed every night. And, the first time I had a beer, it was just this amazing feeling. Like the first time I'd had a full beer, I'd always liked little sips of beer, but when I had a full beer for the first time, actually, I think might have had two. I know I had at least one. An amazing feeling came over me, and it was like all of a sudden I was comfortable in my own skin, and it was like I felt like this must be what other people feel like and why they can seem like they're at ease in the world, because I had never been at ease. And so, I just chased that feeling from there on. I was always looking for that same feeling. And of course, I could never drink enough, and I would drink to black out or pass out every single time, pretty much every single time.
Yeah. Did you have a lot of wreckage to clean up after you got sober?
Well, I mean, there was a lot of wreckage throughout my drinking career. I only drank for 10 years. I started drinking when I was 15, and by the grace of God, I was able to stop by the time I was introduced to the program and therefore was able to stop at the age of 24. But I did enough drinking through those 10 years, lots of car accidents and DUIs and, fights and falling down and blacking out and saying things to people and, terrifying my parents, when I would take their cars and they would never know, what condition it would be in when they would come back or what condition I would be in, and just not being reliable. I went to college and was never able to complete a semester because of my partying. I kind of had cleaned up my act a little bit, by the time I was like in my early 20s, like 22, 23. I had a full-time job. Um, but there was always that fear in the back of it, like that at any time I was going to have another DUI or something bad was going to happen and I was just going to lose everything. So the wreckage that I had to clean up was cleaning up my own life and changing my people, the people, places, and things that I hung out, places and things that I did and where I hung out, so that I could be a productive member of society. That was really the wreckage that I had.
That must have been difficult being so young. Do you feel like you missed part of your youth because you got sober?
No, I feel like I gained my youth because I got sober because, I was miserable. The whole time that I was drinking, I was miserable, and, I got sober in Kansas City, and, there were smaller rooms. I remember I used to go to this. There was like an AA coffee pot sign that hung on the door, and I would go to this little room, in the town where I grew up in Independence, Missouri, and, it was this table, and people would kind of, we would go around the table, and there might be like one other person that was young and everybody else was older, but, I had just known the pain that drinking had caused me, and I really, I saw AA as my way out of that pain. So, once I got sober, I was working I had a pretty good job and I was working in a big computer department, and there were all these people there, and some of them were my age or maybe just a little bit older, and they would invite me to do things that I always thought they were boring and I never had anything to relate to with them. And we'd go water skiing and, we'd go down to the lake and, um, just all kinds of things opened up for me, like, that I was able to do that I couldn't do because I'd been drinking. So, no, I feel like AA gave me my life. And then so I was about a year sober when I moved to New York, and there they had young people meetings, and there were a lot of people that were a lot younger than me that were sober in these big meetings. And, there was a sober club, and there was so much fun stuff to do. I had, and there I met people, and we just do all kinds of fun stuff, go skiing. We'd go to each other's houses and have parties and game night, and there wouldn't be any fighting or car crashes or, you know, and we all pretty much got along.
That's
We weren't,
great.
yeah,
We are not a glum lot.
not at all.
So how has your life changed?
My life is really beyond my wildest dreams. So, I think I'd always known that I wanted to have children and I wanted to be married, but before I got sober, I couldn't really see that for myself, because I was choosing relationships that were very destructive. I was never happy in relationships. And, most of the time I was choosing men who would reject me. Um, I think it was a way of I would choose them on purpose to protect myself because I was afraid of connection. Somebody talked about that in one of the meetings this morning about, that I attended. Um, that they were afraid of connecting, and it's ironic because the thing that I wanted the most was to connect with people, but I had so much fear of connection that I was always sabotaging it. By getting sober, I was able to get into a committed monogamous relationship. I mentioned that I moved to New York. I met someone who was working where I worked, and I had been sober, and he was there for a short time, and he was from New York, and I wound up, when he had to go back, I wound up moving to New York to be with him, And then we got married. And, one of the dreams that I had when I was a child too was, I remember I heard about identical twins and I thought, I want to be a twin. I just thought that was the coolest thing in the world. And it turned out, after I was sober about 6 years and I got pregnant, and I had identical twin girls. And everybody says they look like me, and they are the greatest blessing. And then I always wanted to live in a warm climate. And, we wound up moving to Florida after I'd been in New York for 8 years. So my life is really, beyond my wildest dreams. Sobriety's given me everything. I wouldn't have a life without sobriety. I think I'd probably be dead or very, very ill.
People in this position are not likely to reach out, but maybe there's someone listening that is struggling and they don't know if AA is going to work for them, and they have fear around it. What do you say to someone like that?
I say just, try to keep an open mind, because I never thought that I thought of AA as like a bunch of old guys under a bridge with a paper bag. I didn't know what AA was. And, actually I came into the rooms through Al-Anon, which, it's our sister fellowship. But I was just in so much pain that I was willing to let it help me. And I think that's really the key, is that when I'm willing to give up, just give up the fight. If what you're doing is still working for you, go for it. But, when it's not working, try something different, and for me, that was going to meetings and listening to other people. And I was just worn out. I was just tired and unhappy.
Did you hear your own story in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous?
Yes. In fact, and I share this all the time. When I came into the rooms, it was like all of a sudden I was no longer an alien, because I was always trying to talk to people. I was always trying to explain myself to people or get people to understand me. And I never felt like anybody understood me. I remember people just looking at me like I was crazy and insane. And I thought I was crazy and insane. And then when I came into the rooms and people started talking about all this stuff that was in their heads, I was like, wow, like they talk and think the way that I think, and it's coming out of their mouths, and we're all nodding our heads because we all understand. I heard that stream of consciousness that was, torture to me, coming out of other people's mouths. And that was a tremendous relief. Tremendous.
Did it take long for you to connect to a sponsor?
Yes. So when I got sober in Kansas City, I actually, I continued going to Al-Anon while I was going to AA, because, to be honest, the reason I went into AA was that I went and I met with a counselor, and because of this other person that I was living with and his drinking, we'd put him into rehab because he was suicidal. And I went to this counselor, and she told me that I was an alcoholic, and she was able to break my denial. And she told me that the only way I could save the relationship was if if he got sober, that I would have to get sober. And so that's why I went into AA, and they talk about the only requirement for membership was a desire to stop drinking. Well, I did not have that desire. Alcohol was my best friend. Alcohol was my solution. I didn't come in saying, oh, I need to stop drinking. I came in to say, I need the pain to stop, you know? And so I didn't even have that desire, but I was just in so much pain that I was willing to listen, and it was suggested that you don't drink. And I knew that that was a key component of being an AA. So that's how I stopped drinking.
Mm.
So,
And, th- and then when did you meet a sponsor?
oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. So, I had kind of an Al-Anon sponsor when I was in Kansas City. And then, I remember going to somebody's, it was an anniversary party. And this woman got up and she was speaking, and she talked about trust God, clean house, and help others. And I thought, what is she talking about? Like, I knew about the trust God part, but the clean house, thing. And I didn't know how to help anybody else. I didn't even know how to help myself. But it was shortly thereafter that I moved up to New York. And in New York, they're very clear about, what the instructions are. And so, I got in there and they're like, who's your sponsor? What step are you on? And I'm like, okay, I guess I need to get a sponsor. So that's when I got a sponsor. And I picked a woman who all my friends thought was great. She wasn't great for me, but she did take me, I was able to do my fourth and fifth step, and I was able to check those boxes off. But I've had many different sponsors, and for me, my experience has been that, when the student is ready, the teacher appears, and that's how it happens. I get a sponsor when I'm drawn to a sponsor, or and I pray to God, and I know that that I can't do the ism. I did it in the beginning. I thought, I didn't really have a sponsor, but someone of my good friends pointed out, ism is I sponsor myself. So that doesn't work. So I know that my thinking is off, and I need to have my thinking checked, and I need to be, I need to have someone whom I'm accountable to, who can tell me when my thinking is off, because I don't know. A sick mind can't heal a sick mind. That's what came from Joe and Charlie. I can't take credit for that. But yeah, sponsorship is very important. And I've had a sponsor now, different sponsors, but I've consistently had a sponsor for the last 20 years or maybe more. You know, there have been some periods where I didn't have a sponsor, and those were not good experiences.
Yeah. I've heard it said that if you sponsor yourself, you've got a bad sponsor.
Yes. Not a good idea.
Yeah. So what does your service program look like today? Are you helping other women? Are you uh, performing service outside of AA? What does that look like for you today?
So, as I mentioned, I had those twin girls, and they took up a lot of my time after I had them. I had kind of been sponsoring off and on through, before that, and even after I had them, I had a sponsor who introduced me to a girl, and I sponsored her for a little while, and then you know, kind of dabbled in sponsorship, but then after my girls went off to college, I knew that I needed to fill that hole, and I remember praying a lot. Every morning, in my meditation practice, I would pray. God help me to be useful. I wanted to sponsor, and so. The thing is that someone asks you to sponsor them, and you can't really make that happen. So I just, prayed and made myself open. And I had a lot of learning experiences, with women who, I would get so much out of sponsoring them, because whenever you're taking someone through the steps, you're going through the steps again also. Um, but sometimes I would, the women that I connected with in the beginning that would ask me to sponsor them, they didn't want it for themselves as much as I wanted it for them. And I would do more work, and then that just didn't work. It didn't work for them. It didn't work for me. So it was a learning process. But now I've got about 5 women that I sponsor, and it is the greatest gift. And it really truly is. It keeps me in the steps. It keeps me working the program. And, there's no greater feeling than really seeing someone find the same kind of relief that I found. It's its own reward.
Do you ever feel responsible for someone else's sobriety?
Yeah, like I shared, I used to. I used to feel responsible, but now, I've been taught, and what I've learned is that I'm carrying around a box of tools. The tools are the steps, and I've been given, some great instructions by, some of my sponsors. I had a really great sponsor about 5, 6 years ago, and I did a really in-depth fifth step, and there's a process that we followed, and I use that process now. And
Do you want to explain what the fifth step is?
okay, so the fifth step, so the fourth step is when you make a list of all of your resentments. It's a moral inventory. And then the fifth step is when you share that moral inventory with your sponsor or with an outside party, and it's a way of freeing ourselves. It's kind of like, the Catholic practice of confession, but it's more of a way. For me, the fifth step is a way of taking myself out of isolation, so I can, like I was saying, my head will tell me all kinds of things, and I can, be alone with God, and I can rationalize all kinds of things. But when I have a witness of another person who's hearing those things and can hear those things without judgment, and 9 times out of 10 they're going to say, yeah, me too, it really takes me out of that loneliness and that isolation and that ability to forgive myself, because I think that's the biggest part of it, is that, you know, I may get forgiveness from other people, but I have a really hard time forgiving myself. But when I can hear, another woman, but I could forgive another woman for doing the same thing that I did, and when she's like, me too, I can really feel that forgiveness and move past, and not have to repeat those things over, and let go of the shame, because shame kept me trapped.
Did you try other things and try your own way at the program before following a sponsor's direction?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I thought that the 12 steps were just suggestions, because they do say that they're just suggestions. Um, so yeah, I mean, I've been sober a long time. So in the beginning, I did a lot of, uh, yeah, just self-justification. Well, I'm only gossiping because this person is not, healthy or whatever. I would just rationalize in my head. And yeah, I mean, I did try the easier, softer way. And ultimately I found that the easier, softer way is just by doing the deal and working the steps, because every time that I would try to evade something, because alcoholics, we are notoriously not disciplined, and so every time I would try to evade things, and that was the whole reason I drank, was because I was trying to escape from things. I was trying to avoid things. So when I try to avoid things, mentally, or skirt around it, I'm only doing myself a disservice, because I'm not moving through it. I'm just stuffing it down, and I'm still carrying that baggage around, and until I can move through something, I can't really let go of it and grow and move past it. So,
That's beautiful. So, with a lot of sobriety, with a lot of time, does it get easier? Are there still hard times in sobriety for you?
absolutely, there are hard times. But I'm really blessed in that, I think that the 20s, at least this has been my experience, and I've heard a couple other people that have the same kind of time that I do. The 20s are really formative years, and that's when you kind of decide, kind of define yourself as an adult and how you're going to approach life. And luckily for me, I came into the program at 24, and that became my framework. And, it worked. I knew that my way of living did not work. And so every time I would come into the program, every single time I would feel the relief. Every time, like it says in the promises, I would, it worked when I worked it. And so it became my framework. And so, for me, there's somebody that's in my home group that says, my character defects lessen in frequency, intensity, and duration. And that has been my experience. Now, the road gets narrower. So things that I used to get away with, I no longer get away with. Like I cannot gossip easily at all. If I try to get away with it, I'm gonna have that awful feeling, and I'm gonna know, and I'm gonna have to, make an amend, talk to my sponsor, something. So I mean, I think it does get easier. I'm going through some difficult time right now. I'm taking care of my mother. She has dementia, and anybody can tell you that that's a challenge. But I have the tools, and I have people that I can lean on. And when I start feeling crazy, I know that, wait a minute, I don't have to feel crazy. There is a solution. And usually for me, I have to pick up the phone and have somebody else, whether it's my sponsor or somebody else, that I respect in the program tell me the truth so that I can, I'm like, oh yeah, because it's like I forget. I just forget.
What is the truth?
The truth, for me, that when I am disturbed, it's me. It's always me. It's never anything outside of me. And, I have the power and the tools and the resources to change that. I can always, and God is always there, and God is always the solution. So when I let go of my problem and I honestly ask him for help, and I'm willing to do whatever action is required, I will move through it. But until I do that, if I'm trying to figure it out and fix it on my own, and I'm feeling the pain, that means that I gotta stop and look for other direction, which is usually from God speaking through people most of the time.
Do you have anything else you'd like to tell the audience before we begin to wrap?
Yeah, just don't give up before the miracle. Keep coming. I never stopped coming to AA. When I hear about people who go back out and drink, and I mean, there have been times when I've started inching myself away from the program, and it's, only by the grace of God that I didn't go back out and drink. I have a physical allergy to alcohol, and coupled with a mental obsession, and my disease, I do believe, continues to get stronger, even though I've been sober for a very long time. So I've heard of people that have gone back out. I've heard their stories, and sometimes they don't make it back. It terrifies me. Don't give up, and don't forget, it's always there. It's always available. And I never stopped coming to meetings. I mean, it is the solution for me, and it can be your solution. If you're an alcoholic, I believe it'll work for you.
It's a powerful message. Nan, thanks so much.
Thank you, Michael.
Thanks, everyone, for listening. Thanks for your support. If you want to join the conversation online, you can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/groups/Daily Reflection Podcast. We've got a blog where we write about recovery, our experiences. You can find that at blog.dailyreflectionpodcast.com. You can find us on Twitter at Daily Reflector. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, I'd love to get a review. That would really help us. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great day.